Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Problems with Modern Day Writing. What I wanted to talk about today was actually this post that I saw, and I kind of want to talk about it for a lot of reasons. But it basically says if a show was released in a where a disabled girl dominated 90% of the fights she was in, was never a love interest to anyone, and actually taught the male protagonist 25% of his combat skill set, they'd call it woke propaganda anyway. Her name is Toph, and the audacity of this post. It is so terrible that I decided that I was going to actually make a video about this. So, I mean, everyone likes Toph in the Avatar: The Last Airbender. She's often a lot of people's favorites. She's one of my favorite, actually. And I can tell you why she's one of my favorite. It's because, like, she is very unapologetically herself. She has a lot of flaws. She is, as it says right here, disabled. By the way, you won't see this in any of the more recent ones where a woman is disabled. Instead, what you see is these girls seem to be disabled. Oh, part of their face is burned, or part of this, or part of that. No, seemingly disabled and actually disabled are two very different things. You don't see actual disabled girls on here. She dominates 90% of the fights she's in. It's kind of the world building sort of situation, though. Why is she able to do that? Well, she's able to do that because of her disabled. In other words, she's taken, and I'll just write this down. She has taken what made her bad and changed it into something good. That was a big thing with Toph. She was weak, and you can see it in her parents. She took, and she was disabled, but because of her disability, she was able to meet with the moles, who basically help her to overcome her disabilities and actually become something good, learn earthbending, be able to accomplish a lot of things. And she bypassed a lot of people that were earthbenders as well. That was her thing. She dominates 90% of the fights she was in. Why? And like, what way was she dominating those fights? Was she very quiet and reserved? No. Was she loud? Yeah. But I think what a lot of people missing is she was probably 12. Now, I don't know if you've ever met many 12-year-olds, but actually this was a really good example of what a 12-year-old would be. They would, back talk, they do all these things. But when it also comes to 12, um, another thing, she was highly of herself in a lot of ways. She was not like, oh, I'm so great, I'm so this. She boasted a lot about herself, but at the same time, you felt and the underlying that there was definitely a lot of false bravado there. There wasn't anything that was so different from her that would make her not seem like she was a kid. Uh, very boisterous, very loud. And if anything, she was very tomboyish of a kid. Now, the reason why I don't like this post um, is actually this line right here. Uh, they'd call it woke propaganda. So I would actually like to point out the differences between Toth and what we see in modern day woman writing. Okay. So if you notice, she has a lot of flaws. She's got a lot of things. Um, she's growing up. She's becoming a real person. And we like that. Um, she gets better over time. Like she she was the best, right? She could be pretty much anyone. But even though she was the best, she still, and this is important, still worked to improve herself. Why is that important? Well, let's look at what we see nowadays. If you look at other places where you have these people, a lot of people, women written nowadays are not that way. Let's look at Ray Skywalker. What work did she ever put in to become the best person that she could be? Let's be honest, zero. I mean, I didn't really finish all the second movie because it was that bad, and I never watched the third because it was completely awful because the main character was already at the finish line. If you look at the original Star Wars, Luke starts out weak, he grows to be strong. By the time you reach the third movie, he's lost a hand, he's gone through a lot, basically had the crap kicked out of him, but he overcame it. He became better. Um, Now let's look at Ray. Ray started out as strong in the Force as someone who'd been trained in it for years. She was able to not have her mind read, and she was able to lightsaber fight with the best of them. What is the problem with that? Well, the problem is she shouldn't be able to do any of those things. She should have gotten her butt kicked in there. But she doesn't. She just magically wins. That's why it's woke propaganda, because you can't just go from nothing to everything. And, that's just a lie that's told to a lot of people is that, hey, we started here, we started all the way up here, and it just, where everyone else is down here, and everyone else has to catch up to us. What's the problem with that storytelling? If you start down here and you work your way up to here, that's great because it makes sense as to why these people are weak and why they need to grow, why they need to change. But if you start at the top and you don't need to change and everyone else has to catch up, that's not good storytelling. Think about it like this. If you as a person, new hire comes in, right? Fresh out of college or fresh out of whatever, um, and they come in and they can do your job that you've been working for like 25 years, like better than you. Well, where in the world do they get that skill? Let's say not even a little bit better, but they can do it like 100 times better. Now they may be better at some things, but they need to learn the system. No one just goes into something is perfect in every way. And so when you make a character who's perfect in every way, we know people who think they're like that, and we don't like those people. There's nothing to like about them. Like, um, I'll just kind of put this into perspective of, I'm a teacher at a school. I can kind of put it into perspective of that. There's a lot of kids who come in who think they know how to do everything. And so what do? They don't study. Now what's the problem with that is math is something, because I'm a math teacher, math is something that builds upon itself. You don't just start by knowing everything. No one does. Mainly because it's basically think about math as if it's some sort of language. You don't immediately start speaking the language as soon as you hear it for the first time. First time you heard Spanish or English or whatever, doesn't matter, right? You don't immediately know it. As a child, you spend years learning that language and being able to make the right pronunciations. So just think about it. Let's say someone comes to America and all of a sudden they can speak English perfectly. Well, that person would be an very far abnormality. But if you think about the people who come and they have trouble, but they work really hard, you like that person. Why do you like that person? Because they're working to try to improve themselves. They're working to try to be able to say things. Now, Toph, she didn't start out with everything. Um, she started out with very little, actually. She's blind. And let's go and write these. Her parents are overbearing, and she is unsure of herself. Can't do everything, win everything. Like I think back about the time when she finds out that she got a letter from her parents. She's excited because her parents seem to have come around. that's a big moment for her because she feels like she can trust again. And she really wants to go see him. But when she goes to see him, she's actually ambushed by two other guys who wrote the letter, and they basically just wanted to capture her, get her back to her parents, right? Um, she falls for it really easily. And why does she fall for it? Because that's very much a child thing to want, right? Your parents who have always kind of viewed you as some sort of burden are like, oh, well, I guess now that we know, you can have what you want. Now we know that you're skilled and you've been working on these skills for a long time. That's something that everyone wants, validation, basically. But she does not get that validation. Instead, she was tricked, which is a good way to trick her. That's a good way to trick a 12-year-old. It shows that she's very far from infallible. But does she just sit in the metal cage and just do nothing? No, that's very much not what she does. She keeps trying to bend the metal. She keeps trying to do something, and it actually improves her. She's gotten into trouble, but she works on a way to get herself out of trouble. So even though she can get into trouble, she finds ways to get out of trouble. Let's look at back to Star Wars. I remember the first one, Rey is captured. And what happens to her? Well, they come in, and then all of a sudden she's able to escape on her own with skills she shouldn't have. That's a big problem because if you're using skills you shouldn't have, as opposed to skills that you've worked your entire life to get, like Toph did, um, that's bad. That makes your character completely uninteresting. It's like, well, what can she do tomorrow? What can she do next time on this thing, right? And if you look at things where people get massive amounts of power and then they use that massive amount of power just to get out of one situation, then never use it again, that's bad writing. Yep, 101. Superman's actually a really good example of this. Like his powers are basically whatever they needed to be at the time. And not the best superhero ever written. He's got like only a few weaknesses, and when you look at Batman, everyone loves Batman, but people like Superman a lot less, and that's because normally they haven't seen the full lineup of Superman of all the different things that he can do, or they kind of excuse it away, or they're like, oh well, that's different parallel universes. You can say it so many different ways, but he always contains the core things, and I think that's why a lot of people like him. But at the same time, there's sometimes just completely silly things he doesn't need. Batman is always consistent. He always has basically the same powers, same things. He's just a normal guy with a lot of money and gadgets. And it makes sense that he can make a gadget, right? Because if he needs to get something done, he can make something for that. That makes sense. His power set comes from his ability to plan and prepare. And he spends that time. He doesn't just sit on his butt all day and get handed everything. And so that's kind of the difference there. Like Superman was handed everything, but at the same time, like what makes Superman compelling is the fact that even though he has everything, he still has to overcome a lot of things, and he's good. He's trying to be the best person he can be, even though he sometimes makes mistakes. He has issues, he has problems. So anyway, back to this. Um, when you when you write something as provocative as this, obviously you're looking for some sort of thing. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't care. First of all, um, she should not have been a love interest. She was 12. Do not make her a love interest. Now, I'm not saying that she can't have feelings for this person or this person or whatever. And, it shows that she does have romantic feelings towards some people. And she really enjoys being pampered sometimes and this and that. Like, she has different traits that she doesn't even necessarily know about herself. That's pretty cool. Like, she's discovering who she is. And this is like really a coming of age story for a lot of people, right? Everyone's growing up, and they're growing up faster than they should because they're in the middle of a war, which I think is a really good way to put this. Like, you won't see this in a lot of things today. Um, and yeah, that's great. She taught 25% of his combat skill set. Yeah, she should have. If she didn't, that would be weird. That was why she came into their party to begin with. So I think when I read this, when we call things woke propaganda, what a lot of people are actually saying is not that it's woke propaganda. It's that um, woke means um, it comes easy to the person without effort. If it's coming easy to the person without effort, it's woke. Why is it called woke if it's coming easy? Because they didn't work for it. If you're not working for something, why do you get it? I think that's a big problem with modern day writing is like what they're looking at here is they're trying to excuse away all the bad writing that we're seeing in the Marvels, for instance. Bad writing, terrible writing there. Um, One that really catches me is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Oh my goodness, that was such bad writing. Like I thought the Crystal Skull was bad when it came out, but then that came out. And like I couldn't even finish the movie. I only watched like parts and pieces of it because it was just so bad. You basically went off and you killed the main character, then you made a new main character who has everything without the effort. You know, Indiana Jones, when he would go into fights and when he would go into battles, he'd end out coming out wounded, injured. And I mean, when we look at Toph, she goes in these battles, but she is not um, just kind of participating it in a very flippant way. If you notice, she's always using all her skills all at once. She never falls behind. And she's not just like completely unaffected by everything. Like there are times where she gets hit, she gets wounded. Her inherent weaknesses get taken advantage of. I think a big thing is like a lot of times people like forget, like because she's so in tune and always using her earth bending, people forget that she's blind and they'll throw something to her or she'll try to help with things and she is blind. She can't actually tell whether it's front or back or anything like that. And it shows that she has serious limitations. Limitations that she's trying to overcome, but some limitations she simply can't. And that's why when she fought with Aang the first time, she lost that battle because he didn't use earthbending. If he'd used earthbending, she wouldn't have lost. He used airbending. And that's her problem. Her fundamental problem is that when it comes to other bending, oftentimes it's strong. Other people can beat her just because of the way other things work. She can't see it. And if she can't see it, she's got problems with it. And so when we look at this, she is very beatable. She can be defeated. She is not perfect. Winning 90% of battles, yeah. Now, if I look at Captain Marvel, I can't think of a time she ever lost a battle. It's like she goes into a battle and she's going to win. Another character that I think about, and this is how to write it in the right way, a character who always wins, if you think about One Punch Man, Saitama. He's a great character. Why is he a great character? Well, it's not because he can win every battle, but that's actually a punchline to a joke, not actually what's going on. He can win every battle, and the problem is not that he can win every battle. It's that he doesn't want to win every battle. He used to have great battles and fight and do all these things, and now that he can win every single battle, he is bored, and he's slowly actually losing his humanity, much like the monsters around him that he's always beating. He's losing his humanity because, and it shows in the very beginning, like when that huge monster is attacking the town, vaccine man or whatever, who's come to inoculate the human race. He's like watching it on TV and he's like, I guess I'll go. Like he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the fate of humanity anymore because he's slowly losing everything. And his dream, where he fights those underground mole people and feels the fire of the fight once again, like that is an impactful moment for him. But he wakes up and once again he feels nothing. So if your character is so overpowered, and by the way, Saitama also worked for his power. He didn't just get it. He used to be weak, but he kept overcoming his limits until he was beyond what limits should be. So that's how Saitama became Saitama, is, overcoming those things, and it's caused severe problems. And I don't think a lot of times that movies explore that idea. Like, let's say Rey did suddenly have all these powers, and she slowly started, like, basically losing her humanity, basically not caring about the common people. It would seem very much like she's moving towards dark side sort of thing, but more of a dark side where apathy is the number one feeling. That would have been interesting, where you're not really sure where she's going with this, but she's finding everything so easy that people start to fear her, and instead of, like, everyone for some unknown reason loves her. That could have been an interesting take on the character, because all of a sudden you don't have a character who is just like got all these powers, can fly anything, can do anything. All of a sudden, you're starting to realize that she's not human. And that could have been great. Like, you find out that Rey's parents were like some sort of scientists that genetically engineered the perfect force user. Holy heck, that would have been a great storyline, where they basically shoved her full of a bunch of things to make her the best. And you find that out, and then, um, what is it? I can't even remember his name. It's because I don't even care that much. The only kind of good character, the guy with the red lightsaber, he was okay, but you make him actually become your protagonist by the end, because Rey is basically going out of control. And the reason her parents dropped her on the planet of just sand could have been because, well, she's has great potential, but is also great potential to be evil, and they kind of realize or see the writing on the wall. And she could become the main bad guy. That would have been a much better, much more intriguing storyline. But they can't do that, because if she became the number one bad guy, that would have ruined the thought process that they had. So she can't be that person. Instead, what she needed to be is she needed to be the best woman ever to use the Force. And that is lame, because when you're unbeatable, and everyone has to love you, right? She is very beatable. Uh, she is beatable. Wokeness is unbeatable, and everyone has to love you. Absolutely everyone. There's no one out there that shouldn't love you. And yeah, huge problem there. Um, and Toph's storyline from front to back was great. Her personality comes out really strongly. I love the part, and I don't know, but I think this is one of the best, um, one of the best episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think it's the last season, right before Sozin's Comet comes, and they go to the play, and everyone's like complaining about who they are in one way or another. But when they get to Toph, and they're like, "Yeah, you're played by a big," she's like listening, and she's like, "Wait, is that like a big man who's playing me?" And they're like, "Yeah," and she's like, "Wouldn't have it any other way." That was absolutely peak, because, like, she's funny, like, she can joke about herself, like, she doesn't want to be pictured as a blind little girl. She wants to be pictured as a big tough man. Not because she knows what she is, but she wants people to see her as something that she's not. That's kind of her whole thing, when and she wants to basically be a legend. And I think back, like, people who want to be a legend want to be bigger than what they are. So when she's being played by a big tough man, she's like, "Yeah, of course, make it happen." That's great writing, by the way. Being able to see yourself, being able to point at yourself, and be able to joke about yourself. Like, you don't see that nowadays. And I'm gonna write that down. Toph. Whoops, that was a bit long of a line. Shorten it. Toph can joke about herself. She can joke about herself, can make fun of herself, makes fun of her disability. That is actually great. The fact that she can joke about herself, make fun of her disability, I think some of her best parts in the entire series are her ability to crack jokes about it. Like if you think about nowadays, it's weird. It's weird. Back in the 90s, like we were starting back 90s and early 2000s, we were starting to get to the point where people could make fun of their disabilities. They could use words that aren't usable today and all sorts of things. And everyone thought it was hilarious. Nowadays, no, you can't do that anymore. You can't make fun of who you are. You just have to accept who you are and that you are perfect the way you are. That's stupid. That's completely dumb. We shouldn't be just accepting who we are and what we are. We should be able to make fun of the things that we're bad at. Being able to have that self reflection that, oh, yeah, I do have a bad part this way. You will not see that in a lot of things. And, I think about gosh, I hate to keep going back to Star Wars, but um, when I think about some of their projects, they're just so bad. I think about the one with like all the women, the Woman Coven one. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe how bad that series was. It was so bad in so many ways, um, because no one could make fun of themselves. Everyone was very serious. Sure, I get that from the Jedi point of view. The Jedi are very focused, but like the other people, the younger people, shouldn't have been so focused and so ridiculous and so focused on the wrong thing, right? Way too serious, and they took it way too serious. Like people should have made fun of all sorts of things. People should have made fun of that weird floppy lightsaber. People should have made fun of that. The women who make those chants, and they should have made fun of it themselves. Why are we doing this? It would have been hilarious. They could have made that movie great, but instead they chose to play it all so serious. Can't joke about any of this. And yeah, that's a bad show. Such a bad show. You're making bad shows because you can't see what's wrong. And this is the problem. Toph was not a modern day writing. Let's actually talk about what Toph would be if she was in a modern day thing. So, if Toph was in a modern day series, and matter of fact, I bet a lot of these things show up in the modern day um, one, but she would be very serious all the time. All the time. Um, that would be one of her defining characteristics because she's like rock. She can't ever joke about anything. She would never make fun of herself or anybody else. Well, I wouldn't say anybody else because I mean that happens a lot in a lot of modern day writing. Women will make fun of other people, not themselves. Uh, she would um, be strong, but the reason why would not be explained or make sense. Um, and that's happens all the time. And they might just skip over her whole backstory. Now think about that for a second. If you just skip over Top's backstory, she never saw the moles. She never learned how to earthbend. When she puts her feet on the ground, you don't see how she sees the world around her through the vibrations in her feet. Also, it's so funny when in the play uh the character who plays Toph sees people by screaming at them. Absolutely hilarious, and Toph thinks it's funny too. She doesn't find that odd at all because like sure maybe that could be a way other people see, and she finds that funny. Like she would not have that sense of humor. Um and So she would be strong, but the reason why would not be explained or make sense. Maybe she just has it because she's blind or something like that. That's dumb. Don't, yeah. Another thing that I think we could see from Toph, she would always be better than the Avatar and may even win, may even cause him to win. You know what? I don't even know that. Or be or take on his burden. Both of these are bad situations. I mean, her teaching did help Aang tremendously, right? But taking on his burden would have been a complete butcher of the story. Aang needed to go through this journey because it was his duty. He had run away before, and he's trying not to run away again. And I could see in the end of the Avatar, if it was written today, that Aang does run away again, and Toph or someone else has to take his position. Um, Honestly, if that did happen, absolutely ridiculous. But I could see it happening today because people don't think about that. They just want the woman to be front and center. And if this had started and was like a long running series, I think that is what would have happened, which would have been bad. Um, Her teaching would have helped the Avatar immediately and would have been accepted at once. So in other words, Aang, when he gets the earthbending teacher, would have learned it really fast. Not as good as her or as well as her or anything like that, but she would have been able to teach it so perfectly. She would have been the best teacher that ever taught. And he would understand it completely from that. And I think in order to make that not happen, what you might have to do, he doesn't learn in spite of others, not Toph. So, in other words, other people are getting in the way of him learning, um, not Toph. Toph is teaching it perfectly. She's teaching it so good, but others, because others are um, either part of it, and it could be someone from the group, it could be someone from the outside, are teaching it poorly, and so he can't quite learn. Um, that's how I think that it probably would have gone. Not that she's a bad teacher, but he can't learn because other people are trying to interject. And you kind of saw that a little bit with Katara trying to be like, oh, you should do this with him. I think he learns better in this way because, she's been teaching him and she just makes fun of it. She totally does not care because she wants to teach it in her way. And her way is not necessarily the best, but she does eventually get through to him. And it's like having two very different teachers in school. You can learn from them both. You just have to figure out how to learn from them both. And I think that's missed here big time. So I think that would be one thing if they were to rewrite this character in modern days. Um, there would be someone or some outside force that is stopping him from learning from her, and that's causing the problems. Not that she's doing anything wrong. Completely, completely stupid. So another thing that I think that we would see with this character, and this is probably the last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll probably close this up here. Even after all this, um, she, whoa, I just realized I forgot the H there. Oh, okay, I see, he doesn't learn. Okay, so she uh, calls out people who make fun of her blindness. When people make fun of her blindness or do things like that, she calls them out, not in a joking way or way that they can apologize or anything like that, but she belittles them. She's like, how dare you do this or talk about this with me? And I haven't even seen the new Avatar live action thing, and I'm kind of wondering. how much of this actually shows up in there. I think it would be interesting to see if any of this shows up. Because if any of this shows up in there, I would I'd feel pretty justified about it, but I'd also think that um, it's probably one of the dumbest things that they ever decided to do. There's no reason why you should make this person today because she's not fit in our modern day culture. She belonged in a time and an era that is long past. If you want to make her the way that she was, you have to understand the source material. You have to understand what was going on and do not change her. Keep her the same throughout. Do not make her any of these things. Don't do any of this. Any of this would break the character completely and would make her not very fun at all. You would wokeify her, I guess you could say. As a matter of fact, that's how you would make her woke, right there. And also, uh, aka aka ruin her character. Um, that's how you do it. It would be easy to do. Modern day writings are very much filled with this stuff. And I think this is what you would see. I kind of want to go through, and matter of fact, I might do that. I might go through and just kind of see how Toph is portrayed in modern day writing, just to see if any of this stuff happens in the newest episode. Because if any of it does, honestly, I would not be surprised. Because I keep hearing a lot of people say that it's not good, which kind of makes me feel worried about going and watching it. But there you go. That's why right there. That's why Toph is not a bad character. That's why she could never be called woke propaganda. If you made her exactly somehow one for one what she was then to a new movie or something today, no one would call her woke. Stupid. And anyone who does just doesn't understand or has been burned by so many women, they can't see past the fact that she is a woman, let alone a little girl. My goodness. So yeah, anyway, hope you enjoyed this. Hope this made sense to you. And I really hope that if anyone is writing any characters like this, that this does help you kind of understand why it's not working. Like don't pull the core out of a character. Like you can't remove her any part of who Toph was without ruining her completely. Any of these things, any of these 7 things that I wrote down here, any of them would have ruined Toph completely. Um, any of these would have ruined Toph 100%. But yeah, none of this does. Also, by the way, when I say that she'd call out people, make fun of her blindness. She doesn't actually do that too much, but it's absolutely hilarious. Like when they're going through the sand area, and she points, and she's like, "There it is," and everyone turns like she actually knows, and then she's like, "That's what someone's going to be saying," because she's feeling depressed because they're going through the desert, hadn't found anything, and it is a great a great usage of her character, calling out people for forgetting that she's blind. But she does it in such a joking manner. Like she's not too serious about herself. And that was the number one thing that I think made Toph Toph. So anyway, that is how to actually ruin a character. This is the modern writing that you'd see happen to her. And I actually might go and see the stuff and just see if I was right or not. But anyway, hope that helps someone who's trying to think about writing and what not to do to change a character. Heck, I don't even know if you're writing fan fiction. I don't care. But I hope that this helped. Anyway, have a good day. Bye.